You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News.
From the very beginning, I have always said that agriculture is going to be a critical and foundational part of our economic development. I think that the problem is severe enough that I have decided to take on the portfolio of Secretary of Agriculture, at least for now. And at least until we can reorganize the Department of Agriculture in the way that it will make it ready for the next years to come.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has held the concurrent position of Agriculture Chief since he took office last June 2022. So far, he's dismissed lawmakers and stakeholders who have urged him to appoint a secretary who can take on the role full-time. But is that the right call?
Something's got to give. Hindi talaga magso-survive at hindi talaga mag-thrive ang agriculture sector under the president's watch. 1 year is enough and too much already.
Are there previous instances of our presidents deciding to take on certain portfolios themselves? And how did that go in the past?
It didn't go this long. Of course, there are some instances in the past.
That's political analyst Michael Yusingco.
If I remember correctly, President Arroyo at that time, for a brief period, was also concurrently the Secretary of Defense. But I think that lasted only for a couple of months.
President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo served as concurrent defense chief for just 2 months before choosing Hermogenes Ebdane to lead the department. Do you think this is the longest that a president has held on to a position like this?
I believe so. This is a record-setting bad practice for a president. The reality is it's bad policy. It's bad governance if the president is also functioning as a secretary or a department secretary.
But why is it bad governance for a president to personally lead a department? Yusingco, who's also a law lecturer, says it stems from a failure to recognize the scope of the president's power.
Under the Constitution, the president himself exercises executive power. Nobody else but him. And with that, the Constitution also vests in him the power of control over the entire executive branch. So he should be on top of the entire executive branch, not just one department or two departments. And that's why the Constitution also gives him the power to appoint alter egos so that he can, in a way, have representation in the various departments of the executive branch.
A similar argument was made by opposition Senator Coco Pimentel, who's also a law professor, on one uses the chiefs.
I think he wants his presidency to be known or remembered as the golden years for agriculture in the Philippines. But my point is, you can still do that, even with a regular secretary for the DA. That secretary is still your alter ego. He or she will do what you command him or her to do. So, I mean, sayang po because if the president insists to be the secretary of the Department of Agriculture, how much time or attention can he give the department when he is also involved in geopolitics, foreign policy, trade promotions, etc.? Maraming problema ang bansa
But the call for Marcos to personally lead the agriculture department came from within the sector.
This is Jason Kainglet. I'm the Executive Director of SILAG. It's a multi-agri coalition of all major commodity producers, suppliers, distributors, even millers, and small farmers associations, irrigators, across commodities and across the whole agriculture value chain. We had a unique opportunity because after nung nanalo siya, he actually consulted the sector So kami sa SILAG, several times siya nakausap. And we were actually one of the groups that proposed na siya muna maging agri because we believe na yung gravity ng devastation sa agriculture sector for the past 20 years, especially yung last 6 years, we thought na siya yung tamang tao because of the gravity of the situation. Not because siya si Marcos or siya, because he is the president. Mas gano'n natin siya tinitingnan. And pag presidente na yung nag-take sa agri, so tingnan natin, it would give the signal na serious ang gobyerno ito in confronting the problems facing the agriculture sector. Kaya sa isang agriculture secretary, hindi presidente na hindi papakinggan. The way we put it nga, imagine presidente na yan, napapaikot pa at may mga lumulusot pa. Imagine the onion crisis, itong sugar unwarranted and talagang mga illegal sugar imports. Presidente na siya pero nagkakaproblema pa rin tayo. What more pag hindi presidente yung secretary?
More assessments of the president's performance as agriculture chief after a quick break. A year into his role as agriculture chief, Marcos is receiving mixed reviews. For SINAG, whose concern lies primarily with producers, Marcos is off to a good start. Here's the group's executive director, Jason Cainglet, again.
Kasi kung sa agriculture, talagang if you go to the ground, masaya sila kasi maganda yung presyo nila eh. Talk to rice farmers, corn farmers, talk to onion growers, even yung livestock. Tingin nila nandun yung effort ng presidente to help. And mahirap baliin yun na yun yung experience on the ground. Eh. Siguro sa agri, we can give him scale of 1 to 10, 8. Kaya lang niya eh. Yung 1 year kasi niya talagang nagsimula siya sa below zero pa eh. Dahil dun sa talagang damage.
On the other hand, the farmers group Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas last October urged Marcos to quit the post and appoint a quote-unquote full-time, hard-working, and sincere agriculture secretary. And if you ask the opposition,
Well, at the start, I thought a pro would have to be that the highest ranking government official took on the agriculture portfolio para, di ba, ipahiram yung bigat ng opisina niya sa arguably isa sa pinaka-importanteng sektor, di lang ng ekonomiya pero ng governance. But what have we seen since then?
that's Senator Risa Hontiveros.
I'm sorry, walang maipagmamalaki. And in fact, mas nakasama sa halip na nakabuti. So it's long past time that he should have appointed a full-time agriculture secretary who is actually steeped and an expert in the field so that he can have a partner in addressing this one of the most important matters historically that until today faces Philippine society.
The president's first year in office was rough for consumers. In May, sugar prices hit 136 pesos per kilo in some supermarkets. We also suffered a months-long white onion shortage, and at one point, red onions were more expensive than meat. And that's not all.
I mean, if we just look at the issues about large-scale agricultural smuggling, which virtually constitute economic sabotage, issues related to the El Nino and other problems about agriculture that have been perpetuated under his watch, fiascos that have unfolded under his watch.
And here's Senator Pimentel again, rating the president as agriculture chief.
Yun, imposible ko nang ipasa yun. Kahit 2 scandals in less than 1 year involving the Sugar Regulatory Administration.
Just recently, the president himself weighed in on his performance.
I saw a report earlier this morning where one of the economists said the grade that I will give the president for agriculture is incomplete. I agree with him. We are not yet done. Ang dami pa natin gagawin. We have to undo 30, 35, almost 40 years of neglect when it comes to the agricultural sector.
As you've heard, for a number of analysts, lawmakers, and stakeholders, it's critical that the president appoint a secretary as soon as possible. But Agriculture Group Sinag is urging Marcos to hold on to the post well into the next year.
Sabi namin sa kanya, siguro 6 months to a year. So dapat may tutok talaga ang presidente dyan para everyone follows. Kesa kung iba yung nakaupo dyan.
Before Marcos appoints a secretary, Sinag is hoping he'll oversee the establishment of a central border facility for all agriculture products to pass through and the passage of several priority bills.
Tinatanong ko sa kanila lahat, kaya inaantay ko mag-volunteer sila mag-secretary, ayaw kong palisin eh. Ang aking hangarin para sa DA ay pag iniwanan ko ang DA, by that time, we will have systems in place so that we can guarantee the food supply of the Philippines. We can guarantee that the prices are affordable and that our farmers make a good living. So hanggat matapos natin yun, I suppose you will just have to put up with me as DA Secretary.
But political analyst Michael Yusingco warns that the longer Marcos waits to choose a successor, the harder it will be to find a suitable one.
The timing of the appointment has made it more difficult to accept the appointment because now if someone goes in, someone assumes the portfolio, he will have to or she will have to make moves that should not embarrass the president, right? You remember, the president has been there for more than a year. So presumably, he should be doing a good job, right? So someone who comes in at this point will have a difficult time challenging the past performance of the president as secretary. So it's going to make it more difficult for that person to do the job well.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was edited by Pidoy Blanco. Our executive producer is Jill Danielle Caro, and our senior news editor is Veronica Uy. Follow Teka Teka News on your favorite podcast app, or listen to us for free on YouTube. Thanks for listening.